Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the latest and a very special edition of the PharmaSource podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by David Schneider, founder and CEO of Qualifyze, and also Martin Lehmann, who's CPO at Qualifyze. As many of you will know, the PharmaSource podcast has been a big part of what we do at PharmaSource. And we're very much looking forward to bringing that to life further at CDMO Live with the CDMO Live podcast studio, with a bit of help from our friends at Molecule to Market, sponsored and powered by Qualifyze. So David and Martin, thank you very much for the support. Looking forward to talking to you both today, and a warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Looking forward.
Thank you.
Let's start with a couple of introductions. Could you both please introduce yourself for those that don't know you yet, and give us a bit more information about Qualifyze and what you do? David, maybe let's start with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. So Qualifyze is essentially engaged in the supply risk management space within the pharmaceutical industry, or broader speaking, probably more within the life sciences industry. We're currently serving around 1,400 companies globally, working with several thousands of suppliers. We're doing that with 200 employees, essentially. We have 3 offices across the world. So we recently just opened up our US office in Jersey City, and then we have another large office in Barcelona, as well as in Frankfurt. We actually started as a company that was focusing more on the pure supplier auditing space, with essentially the goal to improve supplier quality compliance, to do this more efficiently, more digitally, so essentially innovating that space. However, over the past years, we started seeing that the real value lies in the data that we're collecting through those audits, because this data is something that no other company in the world has, and that can be leveraged at such a dimension as we have it. And we started building new use cases from that data, more towards assessing supplier risk management, as I said, within the life sciences space. So this is a little bit how we've developed, and it gives you a bit of a feeling of the size. So I would say we actually work with the majority of the pharmaceutical companies already today, which is also, I believe, a strong testament to our success.
Hello, I'm Martin. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Qualifyze, and I'm part of the leadership team as well. Effectively, I'm the guy responsible for building the platform that will enable our vision overall. I think at Qualifyze, we're really blessed to have everything in place to make our vision work. We have a large and very fast-growing library of quality information. We have always had a digital-first mindset. And we have just incredible customers all over the world who really want to work with us to make sure we succeed in our mission. And all these things together make a great recipe for success for the next years.
Pharma in general is experiencing a massive repositioning in supply chains through technology advancements, geopolitical factors, etc. How do you see this affecting your clients and their teams in quality and supply chain areas? David, maybe to you.
I mean, we work with 1,400 pharmaceutical companies globally, really from the US over Europe to Asia. We've essentially inspected over 4,000 production sites globally. So I would say that we actually have a very good transparency of what is happening typically in the market. And in summary, probably there's 3 key trends, I would say. Number one is obviously the rising complexity. Related to that is obviously risk, which is increasing, but there's also a need for smarter and more proactive decision making. I would say the pharmaceutical industry is very good at being reactive if something happens. There are very clear processes, but they're not so good at essentially anticipating certain changes. And what this really means is what we see from our client side is they're actually struggling with more or less fragmented supply networks. While I would say before there was a stronger focus on having a very efficient supply chain, this focus is shifting more towards having resilient supply chain. So also being able to adjust quickly. It might not always be the cheapest option, but essentially the one that keeps you maintain the business most. Obviously, I think this is driven by geopolitical tensions that we've seen, but also by an increasing need to diversify the supplier base, not just related to the tariff situation. I would say this has also been a priority before. As I was mentioning, there's a clear trend to shift towards a more proactive approach rather than a reactive approach, especially when it comes to risk management. So I would say, while quality has maybe more played a check the compliance box in some parts of the organization. Now it is moving more and more to become essentially a strategic partner to supply data, also to procurement and the supply chain professionals. So I would say these are roughly a few things that we've been seeing. And I think here the key is actually to have data available, data that you can trust, that is validated, but also that is easily and quickly available, also across departments, because everyone will have their own set of data which they're working with, but there doesn't seem to be a central platform where everyone can base decisions on. So this is why you lose time and then you essentially become, again, being more reactive rather than proactive.
Do you feel that supply chain teams are well positioned to address these coming challenges?
Obviously, I think that there's no answer that addresses everyone. So what we see is that readiness generally varies, especially by segment. So we tend to see that more larger pharmaceutical companies tend to have more mature systems and processes in place, and they may have already begun even investing in digital solutions to achieve more resilient supplier strategies and supply chains. Obviously, this is also related to having larger budgets. What we typically see, especially if there's tech budget to be distributed across the organization, I would say, for example, in the quality space, this is often not the number one priority where this budget is allocated, even though they have a huge opportunity essentially to generate very reliable data because they work very closely also with the suppliers. So in contrast, more small and mid-sized companies are only now starting essentially to mobilize resources and adopt advanced technologies to modernize their supply chains. However, I would say across the board, I mean, several challenges I would say still persist. So the teams often remain disconnected, especially procurement, supply chain, and quality data is often siloed. I was mentioning the digital readiness is lagging in a few organizations, but I would say in most supply-related decisions are essentially based on a company's own data that they've generated with their own suppliers, but it lacks a little bit the overall industry experience. What other experiences might another pharmaceutical company have experienced with a specific supply? And this information is not so much made available. And I think this is really where we can help and also contribute. And essentially by leveraging the data that we have collected on behalf of our thousands of customers, making this available in a controlled manner, obviously, and then help you to basically make superior decisions by factoring different data sources and different insights from different parts of the world.
And what consequences do you already see for the industry? And I guess specifically, what challenges apply especially to CDMOs? And do you see this getting better or worse?
Yeah. So I think CDMOs, I guess they face a particular complexity as they need to adapt to essentially multiple customer demands, which require flexibility, and you have to adjust to very specific customer needs. So we often see that CDMOs struggle a little bit, where customers want them to operate exactly under their own procedures in order to basically continue working with them. At the same time, because CDMOs work for many different ones, it's not something that they can really do. So I would say this is probably complexity which they have to face with on the customer side. And at the same time, they have much more extensive and much more complex supply chains. And I think this typically then translates into longer lead times, higher quality costs, essentially, then leading to high inventories and overall increased exposure to supplier risks. And what we're seeing that what this could lead to essentially tighten margins or having to rely increasingly on fewer suppliers with bad quality, which essentially can then trickle down the whole supply chain to overall increase costs while having less flexibility. We also see that regulators are increasing the bar as to where GMP really starts in the supply chain, so also making tier 2 and beyond visibility actually more important. I think this is something that could come on top, which is often covered by the responsibility of the CMOs. And essentially, without digital solutions and better risk visibility, these pressures will likely intensify before they improve. At the same time, I also believe that there's quite a consolidation actually happening now in the CDMO space. So there might also be opportunities essentially to learn to build bigger scale and potentially also to expand international operations with regards potentially to the US, so increasing US-based capacity.
Thank you, David. What do you see leaders in the industry doing in this context? How can companies avoid costly challenges in their supplier network?
Yes, as we mentioned, we have quite a broad customer network here, and we're really working with kind of the top pharma companies as well as mid-tier and smaller companies. And what we see industry leaders do is really to start to leverage data to shift from reactive to proactive supplier risk management, right? And my perspective, being a tech guy, really underlines that like new technologies are really making this much easier to combine data from multiple sources that you couldn't do before, and draw insights and understand things that you just couldn't see before, right? So several of our leading customers are taking quite huge steps to break those silos to connect the systems, and to focus on sharing objective data to guide both of the decision makings on the quality side as well as the supply chain side more broadly. But of course, this also means that you need to create a more collaborative and data-driven environment to kind of reduce surprises, improve outcomes, and reduce costs, right? But this, of course, for each side means also that they need to look beyond their own KPIs, and they need to look beyond their own capacities, and they really start collaborating to work better around data and systems.
What data actually makes a difference in managing risk and avoiding costs related to poor quality?
So I think it starts with understanding your supplier network at a deeper level. David referred to this earlier already, but it's not just about understanding your suppliers and what their quality posture is, but to understand their suppliers, so tier 2 or N-2, if you want to call it, and how they are qualified, really to go a level deeper. The second element I would call out is to get real-time information about supplier performance, such as deviations, out of spec, kappa behavior. This is all very important. But this happens already quite a lot at customers, that they get such information, but it should be complemented with a broader market understanding, right? Of you want to look at similar suppliers and what are common challenges in the market and what are specific challenges to your supplier, and to gain that understanding helps you to manage risk in a more forward looking way. The other element is, of course, that data, historic data, for example, about inspections in the past, can help you predict the future and show trends in quality performance. But you always need to take that into account when you're looking at the market in broader terms. Maybe last element here is that we're also seeing leaders looking at additional factors like ESG profiles, also considering the upcoming CSDDD requirements and geopolitical risks that we've also mentioned before. So these are kind of additional factors that are coming in that we're really seeing customers leverage.
So I hear that Qualifyze is planning some big steps in this direction. Could you tell us a bit more about your plans in this area?
Yes, as we already mentioned at the beginning, we started as a company performing supplier audits, essentially collecting data to produce audit reports. However, what we started seeing as we started more analyzing all the data that we've been doing, collecting, because we typically do between 1 and 200 new audits each month. So which is probably, I'm not sure whether there's any company doing more audits than us globally. So we collect tons and tons of data. And when we started working more from a data angle in terms of what insights, supplier quality risk insights can you generate from this data, what we started seeing is that our quality partners started looping in different parts of their organization, mainly people from procurement, but also from supply chain, as the data that we're collecting also has the potential to create significant value for them, because the data that we typically have, there's no other source in the world. And when we started feeling when we started seeing this pull more towards supply risk management, which is obviously also a more strategic decision, when we started seeing this pull from our quality counterparts more towards procurement and supply chain, we started a few years ago, I would say, to start building a new product to essentially address a broader need, and essentially moving away from the pure quality or supplier quality compliance space, but essentially to enable not just a more effective and more efficient supplier quality management especially when it comes to auditing. I think this is more our core, but also to accelerate identification, selection, and qualification of potentially also new suppliers, which I think is very, very important nowadays. So it's fairly easy to identify which suppliers exist, but it's a bit harder to understand how good each supplier is. And I think that's where we can probably help. And we're also providing the means essentially for managing supplier risks more proactively, as Martin was explaining a few times, and to also help quality procurement and supply chain teams to collaborate better through shared data. We've conducted many, many interviews, and we've always been surprised that this has actually been raised sometimes as an impediment to make fast decisions. That data is in different parts of the organization, and we believe that we can actually help them achieve this. So our platform uses essentially the latest technologies. We also leverage generative AI. We're essentially training the models with our own data in a very secure way to normalize and combine validated quality data coming from the audits, also together with public information to generate insights which are often missed or which take a lot of time for our clients to consolidate themselves and also to connect and also to derive the right insights. So I think this is probably the largest transformation that Qualifyze has gone through, and these changes are happening now. And I think this is a super exciting time, essentially, to be leading this journey essentially with the team. And yeah, it's going to be very exciting.
Really the element of technology and data coming together with processes and the people that we're working with, right? So you need to understand both elements. Who are you working with? Who are the users and the beneficiaries? And then what can technology do to enable them?
Of course. Leaning a bit more into that, how do you imagine the platform being used and by whom?
Yeah, the platform is essentially built with quality and procurement leaders in mind. That's kind of the key people that we're currently looking at, and that we've had lots of interviews with, and that we want to enable. We understand some of the pains that they're going through. If I take the first one on the quality side, imagine a head of quality is logging into the platform to assess the key risks that they're facing across their most critical suppliers, right? And based on that, they can make better decisions around how to focus their own audit planning or their own resources towards the right risks and the right suppliers, rather than kind of going super broad. At the same time, if we're looking at the procurement leaders, they're using the same information to get an initial understanding of the quality posture of a potential supplier, which of course is a really crucial element of the selection process early on. Or they can also use the same information for existing suppliers, for example, when they are preparing for a strategic review discussion, right? What's going well, what's not going well. Here have a platform that gives you easy access to data that you typically don't have, or you need to cross the silo to kind of get. So it's really about empowering these teams with actionable information that is consistent across the teams, and that reduces manual effort to put it together, or reduces bias and boosts the confidence in the decision making on all sides.
What's the early feedback from clients? What are they saying to you?
Yeah, so good news is we've been working with clients on this for a number of months, really. And the early feedback has been really exciting. Clients really love the potential to centralize the insights and reduce firefighting that they can do with this. The core use case really is about being able to focus resources on high-risk areas and to move away from checklist compliance to true risk management. That's really the core use case, both on the compliance side, but as well as on the procurement side. And of course, our early adopters are already helping us to shape the roadmap now and over the next couple of months, as we will continue to roll out new features that I believe will completely transform how stakeholders interact with site risk information. So this is really exciting times for us, as of course, but even more so for the clients that we're working with.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. And it sounds like the initial period is going very well, and feedback is very strong. Always important when launching a new product is obviously knowing how it's going. How will you know if you are successful in really shaping the industry moving forward?
Yeah, I think essentially success, I would say, is measured by our customers, right? I think success is metrics that our customers attest to us or not. I think the key here is really to be very, very close to them and to have them essentially engaged in the process. So basically, as Martin was mentioning, clients are very much involved when we develop certain prototypes, when we basically we don't directly build new solutions. We rather test them extensively upfront before essentially building them. I believe if what Martin was saying earlier, if we're able to help clients identify risks before they occur, point out risks, help them be proactive about them, and essentially maybe even prevent certain risks from actually happening. I think that's when I believe that we can be really successful. And I think will also be measured potentially by clients moving to us, basically providing us access to a greater part of their supply chain. Because as you know, audits are essentially these are already the riskiest suppliers which get audited. But the reason why you only audit a certain set of suppliers is also because it's a budget question of how many suppliers you can actually audit. And I believe that with our solution, we cannot just look at the most risky suppliers, but we could potentially be looking at the entire supply chain of our clients essentially, and provide them a very efficient scoring of the risks of their suppliers, not just by mapping it, but essentially by leveraging our data. So I hope this will be how our clients will look at us to use us as a strategic partner to improve their supply risk management activities. And hopefully when we do it in another podcast at some point in the future, we might be able to share more on the success of this.
I'm sure, and I'm sure your clients will see it in exactly that way. Wishing you a lot of success, and obviously we also look forward to hearing more from you at CDMO Live as well. And thank you very much again for talking us through, and we look forward to hearing more at CDMO Live in Rotterdam.
Thank you very much. See you there.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Experience the future of contract manufacturing at CDMO Live 2025. Join us at the World Trade Centre Rotterdam on May the 7th and 8th, 2025 for an exclusive event that brings together the sharpest minds in biopharma outsourcing. For 2 days filled with market insights, best practices and partnering. So head to cdmolive.com to download the agenda and to book your ticket.